Hey, buenos dias, buongiorno, bonjour, konnichiwa, ni hao, dobre outro, guten tag, guten morgen, good morning. This is our 11th lecture, and last time we were together we talked about Rome. The lecture before that we talked about Rome, and we will continue today. Maybe we'll get through with this subject one day, but I have to tell you that this subject of the Roman Empire will stay with us for a long, long time. All right, now I want to go back to my camera here, and let's take a look at a couple of notes here. As we were talking about the other day, you know, Rome had a magnificent army, and Rome also conquered England, did so in 43 of the current era, and would remain in place there until the year 450 CE. And that's kind of hard to believe that Rome would actually take over England. But I'm promising you, good folks, that if you go to Rome today, if you go to England today, you'll find all sorts of remains there about the Roman Empire. London, the principal city, still has the walls there, and these are small walls that were established there by the Romans. Some of the towns that you go to, you find Roman baths will be present there, and it's still in operation, and that's absolutely unreal. But from the times of Trajan, times of Claudius, all the way to the times of Trajan, Rome, the Roman Empire, will expand. If you look at the camera behind, or look at the view behind me, and we look at the extent of the Roman Empire, the Roman Empire will actually expand all the way up through the Danube River. And I'm telling you, good folks, now, if you take a cruise, if you're on Viking Cruise Line, and you take a cruise and you're on the Danube River, you'll find Roman structures, sculptures that are still present there on the sides of mountains to this very day. When the Romans went into Dacia, that's where Romania is located today, they captured the Dacian leader, Decebalus, and captured him and they killed him. They beheaded the man. And for Rome, they will also extend all the way in this direction, as I said earlier, up into Britannia here, that is England, all the way up to where we have Scotland to be present there today. Now, one of the noteworthy places that you'll see there, when you go into Scotland, you'll find a place there which is called the Wall of Hadrian, or Hadrian's Wall, as it is commonly referred to as. And let's see if I can find a likeness here of Hadrian's Wall, and I have one right here, and I'll show you what it looks like here. It is not as high as you think it is. It certainly, when you look at it here, it kind of appears as if it's like the Great Wall of China, and I promise you, good folks, it has nothing like that whatsoever. It's about head high. You can actually climb over it, but it's still present to this very day there. And it kind of serves as a separation between where Scotland is and where England is, somewhat in a separation from that. All right, but nevertheless, the Roman Empire is going to expand magnificently. Here, I wrote out Hadrian's Wall for you here. All right, so what you'll see so many times is as these empires enlarge, they get so large that you can't really control that empire. All right, so I want to change the subject completely, and let's look at several other aspects to Rome. And one of the things that they're recognized for is their architectural genius. And for the Romans, they built amphitheaters, public baths, and those public baths are still there today. In most places that you go to, they still have those old Roman baths. They're literally pea green, and I mean like P-E-A, not P-E-E, green. They also constructed race courses, the Hippodrome. Some of you might be familiar with what is called the Circus Maximus, which was an old race course that supposedly that Nero actually raced in. And I'll show you a photograph of that in just a little bit here. They constructed public buildings. They constructed aqueducts. I'll show you some of the public buildings in just a few minutes here. And we had under Trajan, this is in your textbook. Let's see what page it is, 175, I believe it is in your textbook. This is one of 13 aqueducts that would bring fresh water into the city of Rome. And this would bring, honest to goodness, these aqueducts collectively would bring as much as 300,000 gallons of fresh water into the city each day. You could use this for bathing, for drinking, and it actually had a sewer system, like a flushing system. I don't need to go any further with that. But some of these aqueducts are still present to this day. All right, so let me share a couple other things with you here. with some of the architectural structures that you're going to find in Rome. Now, what this is referred to as, this is called the Pantheon. It has a 142-foot dome, and it's absolutely spectacular. Let's see if I wrote it down. I did write it down for you good folks. Here's a Pantheon. That's how it's spelled. It's a very popular place for many tourists to visit. It doesn't look so spectacular from here, but once you walk inside the Pantheon, you'll be elbow to elbow with probably 1,000 other individuals not practicing social distancing. And one of the things I remember so vividly about the Pantheon, and this is on the interior of the Pantheon, notice the huge oculus that is at the top. Now this is an opening, and it's an opening to the sky. So when it is raining in Rome, you know, where you see the lighted areas down below, that is just full of water there. Now this is a very peculiar photograph in that there's only a handful of people that are inside the Pantheon. Like I said, if you go in the summer months, you'll find 1,000 people inside. Victor Emmanuel II is entombed there. He was the first president of Italy. We'll talk about him next semester anyway. The great Renaissance artist Raphael, he is entombed there. It's a beautiful, beautiful place to visit, and it's got to be on your to-do list when you go to Rome. And I hope you work that into your plan. Another structure that we have that's magnificent, I've got more on this in just a few minutes here, is the Colosseum. The Colosseum has seating capacity of 55,000. It is not used for any events today to my knowledge. It is a tourist attraction here. There is a charge to go inside of it. I'll tell you more about that in just a little bit. I think here's another photograph showing you here the Colosseum as you see it today. You can see down below there are many, many people that are present there. My recommendation is you take a guided tour. If you don't take the tour, you have to buy your ticket, and you'll be in a ticket line. It's about 200 yards long, you know, and that's not a very good place. A couple of the other things here I mentioned a second ago. This is all that remains of the Circus Maximus. But if you go there today, it's an old race circuit, hippodrome, but if you go there today, you'll find people playing soccer out in the lower grounds there, football as they call it in Europe. There's a track around it, which you can actually run around it or walk around it if you wish to do so, and you actually do have some of the people to jog there. This is another area which is found right next to the Colosseum. Colosseum's not in the photograph, but it's right adjacent to the Colosseum. This is called the Roman Forum, and this is where all the senators would meet and important people would meet back in those times. But you can actually walk through there today. I mentioned to you about the statue of the she-wolf with Romulus and Remus the other day. That is present right there on the hill that is above that. Okay, and you'll see a couple of hills there, Capitoline Hill, which is present there likewise. Use your map with that too. Okay, engineering marvels. I mentioned that with the aqueducts here. All right, so let's change our subject just a little bit. The principal religion in Rome until the onset of Christianity was that of Mithraism. We talked about Mithraism at an earlier time here. It was a religion that was found in the times of Alexander and the Hellenistic society. They felt like Mithras was the one true God, the God deity most worthy of being recognized, being worshipped here. All right, shall we move right along here, folks? I need to mention to you, I tell you what, I'm going to go into this subject next. I think this is an appropriate time for us if I can find my photographs here. And one of the magnificent places, and this is a little bit south of Rome, a little bit north of Naples, is a city which is called Pompeii. And that's the way it's pronounced. And, don't confuse it with the pronunciation of Pompey the Great, who was one of the dictators of Rome. But there's a city there, and the city was known as Pompeii. Now, I want to carry you to the year 79 CE, and Pompeii is just a few miles away from Mount Vesuvius. This was a mountain that we talked about the other day, where Spartacus in 73 and 71 BCE had staged a slave revolt. A huge, huge mountain there today, and it was then. It was even larger at that time. In fact, it was a third larger, because in 79 CE, the Pompeii, the volcano at Mount Vesuvius, actually erupted. And when it did so, the top one-third of the mountain just went up into the troposphere. And they went up, and then we all understand the principles of gravity, and so whatever went up, all the rock and the ash and debris that went up into the atmosphere, it's got to come down. And when it came down directly upon this tiny little city here, Pompeii. And it just buried the city. Nobody survived. Nobody survived. There were some people outside the city that were out in the water and away from the city 5 or 6 miles that actually did survive. And it went covered for just thousands of years until not too terribly long ago, it was recovered. And today it is estimated probably a third of the city has been recovered. I wanted to share some photographs with you. You have to just kind of visualize this as a recovered city. And it's almost like it was the way it was when the volcano ash fell into the city itself. That's all been cleared away. The roofs, of course, of the dwellings there are not present. I want to share some other photographs with you about Pompeii. You cannot go there for free. You'll have to buy your ticket. A little bit pricey with that, but well worth your time if you want to visit there. Individuals, which were, these are casts made of the individuals, but the actual individuals in the pose in which they actually died there too. I'm not kidding you with this. You can look at some of these individuals with such clarity that you can see the gingival lining on the teeth. You can actually see where the gums are, that surround the teeth. Magnificent preservations with that. And I'm going to just show you some of the other individuals exactly in the position that they were in which they died. Dogs, cats alike, this is the position where the individual died. You can see all the earthenware vessels that are in the background, and those are all original from that period of time. Some individuals encased in glass in the positions in which they died. So it's a neat place there. And work that into your schedule if you're down into the Naples area, Mount Vesuvius. If you're fortunate enough, you might be able to see Mount Vesuvius. Generally speaking, when you go by Mount Vesuvius, it's so large that you have low-lying clouds that will cover it, and you will not be able to see that. All right. Now, the Romans are also recognized for their jurisprudence, for their laws. At first, the Roman laws were unwritten. They were interpreted by the patricians, and then later there was an insistence to write the laws, and it is referred to as the Law of the 12 Tables. Now, I want you to read your supplemental reading article that addresses that topic, the Law of the 12 Tables, and they're kind of interesting with that too. Not a whole lot different from the Code of Deuteronomy, nor from the Code of Deuteronomy, or from Hammurabi's code. At first, they were on wooden tablets. Later, they were on bronze tablets. It's referred to as the Law of the 12 Tables. Now, one of the things that I like to point out in class, and as we go through that, and I'm not in class with you where I have my supplemental reader in front of me and you have yours in front of you. That would be too challenging to try to pull that off. But one of the things I wanted to share with you, and I'd like to point this out in class, is that if a person would lie, particularly a slave would lie, then you're actually thrown from the rock. And that was the punishment that you had. You were thrown from what was called Tarpeian rock. Now, the photograph I showed you a few minutes ago of the Roman Forum is on the other side of the rock. So when you go out of the Roman Forum and you go up to where the statue is of the she-wolf of Romulus and Remus, just walk around the edge and you will run across what is called Tarpeian rock. And this is where the slaves and other individuals that would lie and commit other transgressions, where they're actually thrown off of this rock too. So anyway, that's kind of neat there. It's called Tarpeian rock. I think that's one of your examination questions, by the way. All right, so that was that. Okay, now Rome also had what is recognized as the great jurists. These are like Supreme Court justices. And let's see if I have their names here. I think this is one of your examination questions here, showing you the great jurists. All right, now the way you want to pronounce this is Gaius was one of them. Gaius is, there's no real translation into English for the name. It's kind of like Joe. It's just a very common name, Gaius Julius Caesar. You see many people name that. If you were in my face-to-face class, I would give you a project in which I'd give you a handout, and it tells various Roman names there and what the names mean, and you would have to come up with a Roman name for yourself and present it to the class. And anyway, I thought about that, and I couldn't figure out a proper way in which we could actually do that. Continuing on with the great jurists, you had Ulpian, Papinian, Paulus, which is a common name, and another name, which is another person who is known as Modestinus. All righty, so anyway, shall we move right along here, folks? Now, Marcus Aurelius died in the year 180 CE. Marcus Aurelius is considered to be one of the 5 good emperors. Now, up until Marcus Aurelius, the 4 others, Nerva, Antoninus Pius, and so forth, those all carefully chose, Trajan, Hadrian, all carefully chose who their successor would be. And if you don't do that, you're going to run into problems. We end up with civil war to take place. And Marcus Aurelius didn't do that, and he chose instead his worthless son, who's known as Commodus. Now, Commodus sometimes fought in the gladiatorial arena, and Commodus was just a brutal, inept tyrant, had disdain for the Senate, and in fact, he was just a very, very poor leader. Always envisioned himself like being a superhero, a macho guy, and he was strangled to death by his wrestling coach in the year 192 CE. And then after the death of Commodus, civil war broke out. All right, and that's something that is not desirable. And the person that will come out victorious with this as an individual by the name of Septimius Severus. You can see the years there, 193 to 211. I'll show you a likeness of Septimius Severus, the emperor. Not a very good leader. He just had contempt for the Senate, and just would not allow the Senate to actually function in the proper manner there. That's on page 192 if you want to follow along with me. All right, this period of time was known as the Septimian dynasty, or Severan dynasty. All right, with Rome's numbers, Rome's territory being so extended, this created a difficult situation for Rome into controlling this. We had too many people, there was not enough food, hunger, diseases set forth. In the years that follow Septimius Severus from 211 to 284, 26 emperors died violent deaths. And by being so extended and having no more slaves to be brought into Rome, it left them in a weakened position. And Goths, who was a rivalry from the north, moved into Roman encroached areas there, completely took over the Balkans by the year 251, killed the Roman emperor Decius, and that, to compound things even further, we're going to have the Persians to move in from the east. Will capture the Roman emperor Valerian. They tortured him, made him get into a position, put their feet on top of him like he was, and pretend that he was a footstool, and then they actually killed him and then stuffed his body and placed it in some kind of awkward, embarrassing position. That was in the year 260. So things are not going very well for the Romans. Now, the Romans also had a different type of philosophy, and I want you to think about this a little bit. We talked at an earlier time about the philosophies of the Hellenistic society, with Epicureanism, Stoicism, and skepticism. But for the Romans, they came out with a new type of philosophy, and it was developed by a person by the name of Plotinus, and the philosophy was known as Neoplatonism. Unfortunately for you good folks, and for myself, I'm going to have to repeat Neoplatonism to you many, many times before we're all said and done with that. And that'll come in the course of the next few lectures anyway. Neoplatonism. All right, it goes something like this. The human soul was originally a part of God. And when you're born, that part of God becomes your soul, and it stays with you. The greatest good in life is upon your death, we get a reunification of that soul with God. This is known as Neoplatonism. Let me show you how to spell it one more time here. Neoplatonism. It'll be a predominant philosophy in the Roman Empire and for a long, long time here. Now, it also advocated what was called asceticism. Get comfortable with this term, because the next time we get together, we're going to be talking about Jesus Christ and Christianity. And this is a part of the early parts of Christianity as asceticism. And you need to recognize this. One can reach a higher spiritual level through rigorous self-discipline and self-denial. And if you were in class, that's what I would do right now. I'd look around the room and see some of you that might have a Coca-Cola on the table, or a glass of water on the table, or car keys. And I would ask you then, why do you have your car keys? And you would say, well, that's why I used to start my car and drive my car to school. And my response would be, why don't you walk? Why do you have to have that glass of water? Why do you have to have that soft drink, that Coca-Cola there? And you would tell me, because I'm thirsty. And I would tell you that under asceticism, you would be a much happier person if you did not have that set of keys, you did not have that glass of water. So anyway, a higher spiritual level can be achieved through self-denial and through self-discipline. That is asceticism. All right, now I want to move on into a different subject here, and let's see if I wrote it down for you good folks here. And I want to talk to you just a little bit. In fact, I'll talk to you more than you really want to hear about gladiators. All right, and let's see if I can find a good likeness here. And I want to point out to you good folks that we're looking at the Colosseum here, and you find a photograph of it in your textbook. And let's see if I can get this to darken a little bit. The Colosseum, I mentioned a few minutes ago, has a seating capacity of 55,000 individuals, and I am not really happy with that photograph that I'm seeing there, so I'm going to try to find a different photograph. Bear with me for just a few minutes here. And I'm going to go back to the photograph that's on page 173 in your textbook, so excuse me for moving this out of the way. And I want to move this one back in and see if that is much better for you good folks here. All right, this is the Colosseum here, or the interior of the Colosseum. Seating capacity of 55,000 here. I don't want to go back to my photo of the Colosseum, but there are so many of these. Yes, I guess I will. So many of these little portals here. These are called vomitoria. Vomitoria, like you vomit, and when you vomit, you spew things out. And the vomitoria allows people to literally spew out of the Colosseum, and you can completely evacuate that 55,000 capacity Colosseum in just a matter of about 2 minutes with that too. Now, I don't mean to indicate to you folks that the Colosseum is the sole place in which you would find the gladiatorial events to take place. And in many of the Roman-controlled areas, you'll find gladiatorial events that would take place in smaller areas such as Syracuse, or even in the present-day Israel today. All right, now, let's go through this for a few minutes here. When you go to the Colosseum today, and there is a charge for this, notice that there, in this area here, there's a partial covering over the arena. Now, all of this area here is the arena, so you can imagine during the times of the events that this was all covered over. It was covered over. In fact, you could cover it over, and you could really, it was so watertight that you could flood that area and then bring ships in, actually small, like triremes in, and have mock naval combat battles right there in the arena itself. Now, if you look down below, and the flooring has been removed here, this is an area which is called the Hypogeum. It's an area called the Hypogeum. You can actually go down there today. You get a special ticket, and you pay a little bit extra, and you can go down. But that's where the animals were kept. That's where we had all these predators, these large cats that were kept there, and they're kept in cages. All right, so what would take place here is that the animals would be brought to the arena, and they'd be brought up by elevators. And I'm looking around here trying to find something for you folks here. I'm going to remove my book temporarily here. So let's take a look at the arena. The arena floor is here, where the people are seated is up here. You have to use your imagination with this. You are allowed to be seated. Think of it like right in any stadium. You're allowed to be seated according to your social status. So if you were one of the senators and their families, you would be down very, very close to where the arena is. If the person that sponsors the event, and somebody's got to pay for this, and it's very expensive, so the person that sponsors the event is referred to as the editor. Now, the editor might be the emperor, but it may not be the emperor. All right. If the editor sits on the north side here, this would be about where the 50-yard line would be at a football game. All right, for the slaves and for the women, you have to sit in the upper sections up here. So you're in the nosebleed section there. Now, I tried to draw this for you where the elevators would be. So if you're a gladiator, and you're down in the arena, you have elevators that come to the surface at various places. So you don't know where the line is coming up. So if you're out in the arena there, you're having to circle around, look around 180 degrees, wondering where the big cats are going to emerge from next. Now, in addition to this, you'll find that over the arena itself, it probably would be better if I go back to this. During those times, over the arena, there was like a retractable dome that went over the top here. It was called a velaria. And so this means that in bright sunshine, if it was a hot day, bright sunshine, you could actually pull this dome and close over the arena to prevent the sun from baking you with that. You also had concessionaires, and these concessionaire stewardesses that would walk through the stands, and they would sell cakes and pastries and dates and wine. It kind of like today, if you go to a professional football game or something, you can have a professional baseball game, get yourself cold beer, get yourself, a soft drink or something on that order too. Now, for the day's event, and most people don't realize this, you've only watched gladiatorial events through movies and that sort of thing, but it's really organized into 3 phases. We have the first phase that takes place in the morning, and this gladiatorial event, this is going to take the entire day for all 3 phases to take place. But for the first one, which takes place in the early morning, it's called the venatio. The venatio, or it translates to mean the wild beast hunt. Wild beast hunt. And here's where you can find as many as 12,000 animals will be brought into the arena. Many of these animals are predators. They will turn upon the other animals and attack the other animals, take their lives. Included in this would be elephants and rhinoceros and hippopotamus, giraffes, elk, onagers. Onagers are wild goats, ostriches, cranes, leopards, and lions, and tigers, and bears would also be brought in too. And I'm not exaggerating with that. You'd have as many as 11,000, 12,000 animals that would all be slaughtered at this time here too. You would have light armored hunters, which were expert hunters, and these hunters, which were called the venatores, and they wore light armor. And let's see if I can get it like this. They wore light armor, they had long spears, and if the animals didn't kill each other off, then the venatores would likewise do this. Okay, as we move into midday, you may have a little bit of break there, and then we finally enter into the second phase, which is referred to as the Ludi Meridiani, or the midday games is what it actually translates to be. And this is, at this point, it's kind of an exciting time too. This is when the damnati, and that's what they were referred to as the damnati. These are the condemned ones. And the condemned ones were criminals, barbarians, and prisoners of war, and they would all be brought into the arena there. And you might be armed, with a trident or something, and you would fight the other members of the damnati. It was also not unusual to have the damnati to face the lions, and the lions, would of course tear the damnati apart with that. There is no evidence whatsoever of Christians being brought into the arena. So I don't know if that ever happened or not, but there's no evidence of it anyway. Okay, and then we're going to go into the third event. And this is a highlight of the day. This is the main attraction. This is a featured attraction here. And this is where we have the gladiators. Now, the gladiators are going to be brought into the arena. Now, the gladiators live in barracks. And these barracks are outside the Colosseum, or outside similar to a Colosseum in another city anyway. And these are professional athletes, and they're trained. They work out. Many of them are slaves, but many of them actually are volunteers. It's kind of like professional football today. And they just enjoy this life of being a gladiator. And for many of these gladiators, they are heroes. They're heroes in Rome. The kids dress like the gladiators. They dress like the gladiators, refer to themselves, kind of like people have today, where they have a football jersey on with a name on it on the back anyway. And it was very, very similar to that. For these gladiators, they were hero worship. The women were attracted to them. They always had a difficult time in keeping some of the women away from where the barracks were, where the dormitories were, where the gladiators were, because the women would try to visit at night so they could spend time with the gladiators. I'm not making this this up here, folks, much like what we have today in current times anyway. All right, so these are the gladiators. And you had such gladiators as Rotarius, who was known as the net man, Rotarius. And Rotarius had a heavy net, a trident, and a dagger, like a Peugeot anyway. You also had another one which was called Secutor, which name translates to mean follower, who had a sword, a large sword, a helmet, and a face mask. And you can see these sometimes if you're watching reenactments or you watch movies about this period of time. All right, here's what I'm talking about here, a type of gladiatorial event. This, of course, is reenactment here, carrying the trident or having the net and the long sword and so forth. All right, so anyway, and so that was the events that would take place there. And there's Secutor. And the way the event would go here, you would fight until one person was exhausted and just could not continue any further. You also had a referee that was in the arena, and it's just like in a boxing match. This referee, would separate the two individuals or bring the two individuals together, follow the rules and so forth here. And if you wish to concede, if you wish to give up, and you just could not take it anymore in the arena, then what you did, you took your left hand and you raised your left finger and would put your left finger straight up in the air. And this indicated that you were done. You just you couldn't continue any further with that. And then it would be up to the editor to decide upon your fate. And the crowd would very often yell out in unison. They would yell out such as, "Missus, Missus," and what Missus means, let him live. Let him live with that. All right, now the editor would signal thumbs down to mean that the individual lives. A lot of people think it's the other way around. Thumbs up, means let him live. Thumbs down meant let him live. Now, if the gladiator had not performed very well, then the crowd would yell out in unison, "Augula vibera," which translates in Latin to mean slit his throat, beat and burn him. And in that case, then it would up to the editor, then the editor's thumb would go up, and that meant that the individual would die in the arena. Now I want to go back here up to talk about Rotarius or Secutor, Rotarius also known as Crescens, and Secutor. You always had replacements. So if you were in the arena and Rotarius is killed in the arena, you can rest assured that there would be another Rotarius that will take his place very, very shortly. And the same thing for Secutor, same thing for that too. All right, so anyway, it's an exciting event here. For the winner of the gladiatorial event would be given cash prizes, maybe a crown, a palm of victory, and if you've been especially brave, you'd be given the wooden sword. And if you were given a wooden sword, then you could walk out of the gate of life, and you had your freedom. But like I said, for many of these gladiators, it was their way of life, and they didn't want their freedom with that. We also had some, and you can see this in your textbook, there were female gladiators such as Amazon, such as Aquilia, that would also fight in the arena. On one event, and I always tell my class about this, two individuals, Priscus and Verus, who were gladiators, and they were both very well known, and they were fighting to the death, and finally just each one of them could go no further, and for each one of them they raised their left finger simultaneously, just like that. And for both of them, they were given the rudis, and they were allowed to walk out of the gate of life. Now, it always reminds me, and I like to spend time on this, when we talk about, if you ever watched the movie, read the books here about the Hunger Games, and the Hunger Games, which deals, with going into the arena. Notice all the names in the movie and Hunger Games there. You had Claudius, you had Cato. It's just all the names that we have, in that movie are associated with the times here we're talking about in Rome. And if we think to the Hunger Games, the first one that they came out with, when we had Peter and we had Katniss that were right to the very last, and the editor changed the rules, in which the editor originally said there could be two victors, from each of the districts. The two victors from the same district could win, and then right at the last minute, he changed the rules. And it always reminds me of Priscus and Verus here, when they both raised their hands simultaneously, when we had Peter and Katniss that had the night lock, and they both
both decided they would eat the night rock at the same time. And the editor stopped the event and let both of them live. And I think that's a really, really good story with that. All right, it's a good place for me to stop today here, folks. I was hoping to get through with this and get into the section here on Diocletian, but I think I'll just do that the next time, and then we'll get it and put us well on the way to going into Christianity. All right, stay up with your material here, folks. We're nearing another examination here. All right, thank you very much for your attendance.